So you're an immigrant here in the United States. Let's say you came on some sort of visit visa or some other type of visa, or maybe you came long time ago as a student or some other type of G visa into the United States. And you have a United States son or daughter that's a U.S. citizen and they're over 21. Guess what? That U.S. citizen child can help you get a green card if you're an immigrant parent of a U.S. citizen son or daughter over the age of 21. In this video, I'm going to explain the entire steps in the process that you as the immigrant are going to be able to apply for adjustment of status, which means you're going to be able to stay in the United States and get a green card while you're here without having to go back to your home country. Okay. Now, this process is adjustment of status, and a lot of people are eligible to do it. You know, the most common ones that I do are husband and wife that are here on a visit visa and they're trying to get their husband and wife to get a green card while they're here in the United States. But guess what? Parents of U.S. citizens are eligible for the same process if they meet these conditions. Okay. The first condition you got to meet is that you came to the United States on some sort of visa and you were inspected and admitted into the United States. Okay. It doesn't mean that you came over the border. Those people are not going to be eligible to use this process. All right. Or those people who came over on some sort of like I-94 that was basically like paroled them in for a limited period of time, because that doesn't work. Okay. So this is not for like asylum seekers who came over the Mexico border. These are for people who came, let's say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and they came on a visit visa or other visa that allowed them to come here into the United States. And they had U.S. citizen children that were born here, or let's say their children became U.S. citizens at some point and so forth, and they're visiting from overseas. Those people can stay here in the United States and get a green card through adjustment of status by filing these forms. Okay. Now, these are the forms. First, you have to file what's known as the I-130 form. That's a petition for the U.S. citizen to sponsor his relative. Okay. In this case, the U.S. citizen's son or daughter is going to be filing the petition for the parent. It could be the mom, dad, or both at the same time. Next, you're going to be filing the same time you file the I-130, the adjustment of status I-485 form. Okay. Now that form is really important because that helps you get the green card. However, I want to say it's really critical that you file the I-864, which is the affidavit of support, because the U.S. government says, if I'm going to give your family member a green card, you got to be able to show that you actually can financially support them, which is really, really critical. All right. I know a lot of my clients struggle with that. They're like, hey, my son's 21. He doesn't really have a job or income. Well, guess what? They're going to have to get a joint sponsor, because you can get a joint sponsor that could fill out the I-864. Okay. Now, those are the three key forms: I-130, 485, and the 864. However, I recommend to all of my clients file the travel document, the I-131, because the government says while your green card case is pending, right now it's really fast. It could be a year or more or less. You can get an I-131 and travel outside the U.S. and get back into the U.S. That's going to really help you. And also the most obvious one is the work permit, which is I-765. So that parent, if he needs a little bit of income or she needs a little bit of income, they can go and work and start helping their children and so forth on. Okay. So now there were the forms. All right. Now let's talk about the next step, which is really, what is the evidence you're going to have to submit? Well, in this one, it's a lot more simple than if you were doing it on a marriage basis, because the most important evidence you're going to submit is the birth certificate of your U.S. citizen child, showing that you are the biological parents. So make sure the birth certificate identifies your name correctly and the name matches the passport and your birth documents. Okay. So that's going to be your evidence in support of it. And obviously you should have a relationship, because, hey, if this is your child, this is the U.S. citizen, you should be living with them or have lived with them and so forth. Okay. So those are the forms and the evidence that's necessary. Now let's talk about the next steps in terms of what happens after you submit your case. When you submit it, you're going to get the receipt notices. All right. So the receipt notice is going to be for the I-130, the 485. And if you did the work permit and the travel document, you'll get a receipt notice for that as well. All right. Those are important because that'll help you keep track of your case. And let's say the government says in the future, we need more evidence about your relationship, send us an updated birth certificate or send us a birth certificate of you, the immigrant applicant. You're going to have your receipt notice that can correspond with it. And then you just respond to the government's request for more evidence. But most of the time in our office, it really doesn't happen We try to do a good job to make sure everything is submitted, correctly and timely so that the government will approve the case. All right. Now let's talk about the approval process. Majority of my clients, thankfully in the last couple of years, 2 years or so, have been getting their green cards approved oftentimes without an interview, especially the ones that are, let's say, parents of U.S. citizens. Because frankly speaking, proof of the birth certificate, especially if it's a U.S. birth certificate, is sufficient evidence that you have a relationship in terms of this is a parent-child relationship. So some of my clients recently, just last week, got it approved without an interview, and they were so pleasantly shocked because they thought they were going to have to go in and get that interview done before they were going to get their case approved. All right. Now, if you do have an interview, I want you to go prepared. All right. The most important piece of evidence you're going to have to bring is that birth certificate establishing the relationship, and also your passport if you're the U.S. citizen. And then if you're the immigrant, you're going to have to bring your birth certificate, your passport, any of the other identification documents demonstrating you're kind of with your child who's the U.S. citizen. All right. So those are really the steps. I don't really have much to say about it. You can ask some comments, questions down below, and I'll try to respond to them. But the process is relatively simple. I've done this dozens of times for immigrants who came, let's say 25 years ago on a visit visa and they overstayed and they started a family here. They have U.S. citizen children. I can help them. I can help you get a green card through this adjustment of status process because we've done it successfully for so many people. And this is the best time to get a green card, because election year is coming up and we don't know who's going to be president next year. All right. Thank you so much.